tonight, flooding on the Daly River, now the worst in recorded history. And survivors of previous Katherine floods reliving the trauma today. Good evening, I'm Mitchell Abram. This is ABC News Northern Territory. Also tonight, a mysterious eye infection spreading through the NTFL. The federal government to provide more fuel as the Middle East war continues to disrupt supply. And the Matildas take on North Korea in tonight's must-win Women's Asian Cup quarter-final. Katherine's mayor is urging the NT government to call in the Australian Defence Force as residents recover from the town's worst flood in almost 30 years. Meanwhile, the Daly River has reached record-breaking levels, inundating many homes in Nauru, and with more rain on the way, it's not over yet.
Incredible scenes after a week of wild weather destroyed homes and displaced hundreds of people.
Nothing but water. Our house is inundated. It come that quick.
This Katherine home, one of many affected by the worst flood in 28 years.
There's some guys from work, they've organised to get a few of their payments together and actually donate it to us, which is just, unbelievable, really.
In Nauru, on the Daly River, flooding is the worst in recorded history, with levels still rising.
Across the region, more than 800 people remain in evacuation centres in Katherine, Mataranka and Darwin.
An anxious wait for residents of Nauru and Palumpa who've spent 6 days in those centres and are no closer to knowing when they can return home.
This will be a really prolonged flood event.
So we've got a lot of the little dogs out, the chihuahuas and small fluffies.
In Katherine, the river now receding, but 196 homes still without power. Residents facing a massive clean-up, which the mayor says is too big for the town to handle alone.
They are broken and they are devastated. We have ADF personnel here in our Katherine community who have been coming in and volunteering and helping people, but I know that they would very much like the opportunity to put their uniforms on, come into town and stand side by side with us.
But so far, no request from government.
To date, we have been able to rely on our hard-working volunteers and emergency responders in the Katherine area.
With a forecast for thunderstorms, more heavy rain and the potential for further river rise, the question now, how long volunteers can keep the momentum. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
Let's go to Katherine now, where reporter Olivana Lathouris has spent the last few days. Ollie, what is the latest from down there?
Yeah, good evening, Mitch. Well, we've seen a lot of more businesses opening their doors today, a lot more people coming through the middle of town, making the most of some dry weather after what has been such a wet week here in Katherine. But while some businesses have managed to reopen, there are businesses that haven't been able to open, and that includes bottle shops. Now, restrictions on the sale of alcohol were introduced at the start of this disaster last week. The sale of takeaway alcohol was suspended and there were multiple restrictions put on licensed venues. Now, there were hopes those restrictions would be lifted today, but after a meeting this morning, it was decided they would be extended over the weekend and into next week. Now, part of the reason for that is because the hospital here in Katherine remains closed and police and other first responders are really diverting their attention to just dealing with the recovery effort. Meanwhile, Mitch, residents have begun the clean-up at their homes. We've seen large piles of furniture, mattresses, white goods piling up as people begin to go through their flood-impacted homes. And there are households here, many households, which have lost absolutely everything. So while those disaster payments have been made available to people here in Katherine, just seeing the amount of stuff that people have been throwing out, sometimes pretty much everything they own, it's not really going to touch the sides for those people, and it's going to be a very long road ahead to get back on their feet, Mitch.
Yeah, still a lot of work to do, Ollie. Thank you for joining us. Authorities are warning top-end residents to keep an eye out for crocodiles after the week of torrential rain and flooding across the region. With over 100,000 salt and freshwater crocodiles in the territory, there's a strong possibility they could have moved further inland or might turn up in unexpected places. They've been seen galloping through Katherine and relaxing on roadsides around Kakadu National Park. Authorities are urging the public not to put themselves or rescue crews at risk.
Our key message to the community remains simple: avoid unnecessary travel and never drive through floodwaters. Floodwaters can hide damaged roads, debris and other hazards, and in the Territory they also present a very real crocodile threat.
In any natural disaster, the mental and emotional toll can be very high. So the Red Cross is urging people to seek help if they need it, particularly survivors of previous traumatic floods.
Homes devastated, livelihoods washed away. For many residents of Katherine, this experience is all too familiar.
Yeah, so we went through the flood in 1998 and in 2006. And it's quite overwhelming.
For victims of the 1998 disaster, current events may be affecting them deeply.
Floods generally, and especially for communities at previous experience, it is very clearly it re-traumatizes.
1998 is considered the town's worst flood, with the Katherine River peaking at 20.4 metres.
I said to my husband, "When do you think it's going to stop rising?" And he was such an honest man. He looked straight at me and said, "I have no idea." And with that, I laid down and went sound asleep through shock. I couldn't believe it. I thought we might drown.
3 people lost their lives and most of the town was underwater.
In 98, it was sort of very much more, unless you were with emergency services, you kind of got in a boat and you went and found people and you found if they were okay.
Even for those without previous flood experience, it can be emotionally draining. The Australian Psychological Society recommends people focus on problem solving, maintaining social connections, and taking time for pleasurable activities if possible. It also recommends quickly re-establishing normal routines, not to bottle up feelings, and to remind yourself that things will get better. Emotional as well as physical scars. Tilda Colling, ABC News.
NT health authorities are investigating a spate of mysterious eye infections in Darwin's AFL players after weeks of wet weather footy at the top end's football ovals. One club says many of their players are suffering, with an optometrist effectively ruling out viral conjunctivitis as the cause. Oliver Chaseling reports.
Premiership contenders getting down in the mud at Marara Stadium last weekend amid an outbreak of eye infections affecting dozens of players.
Really red eyes, quite watery. A lot of players are complaining of quite severe pain and starting to lose some vision.
The club's secretary says 27 players are laid low, with one diagnosed last week with the rare fungal infection Microsporidia keratitis.
So we've currently got 4 of our Premier League players and a lot of our fly-in players have been affected actually. So they're getting treatment over in Victoria and a couple getting treatment down in Adelaide, but it has mostly been our Premier League and Premier League reserve who have been playing finals.
NT Health has issued a public health alert urging players with symptoms of conjunctivitis to come forward, saying no specific pathogen has been identified as the cause. This optometrist has treated 14 people for the mysterious condition, which hasn't responded to standard treatment.
We're noticing, even though their eyes might have been feeling a little bit better, the actual lesions that we were seeing on their eyes weren't improving at the rate we would expect them to.
He says the common factor is Marara Stadium, smashed in recent weeks by torrential rain.
14 people, all either AFL players or family of AFL that are down on those grounds to support them. No one at all that's not involved with football has come in with this.
AFL-NT confirming today that tomorrow's grand finals will proceed at Marara, rain, hail or shine.
It is the finals, so I've mentioned that to some of the players and they're hell-bent on playing. So really the thing is, if they get any mud splashes or anything like that, they need to rinse their eyes out straight away.
I was down at training last night and the girls are still really, actively training and enthusiastic, and the vibe was really good. So I think the focus is still on winning the flag tomorrow.
All eyes on the prize, infected or not. Oliver Chaseling, ABC News.
An NT couple has been charged with drug supply offences after allegedly taking over the Darwin operations of a methamphetamine syndicate based in Queensland. As part of a joint operation, NT police arrested a 54-year-old woman on the 5th of March, finding 17 grams of methamphetamine. She's been charged with supplying a commercial quantity, possessing tainted property and a prohibited weapon. Her 44-year-old partner has been charged with drug and tainted property offences. Police also allege a 15-year-old courier travelled from Queensland to Darwin and received a significant amount of cash and returned to Queensland on the same day. A prominent member of Darwin's Greek community, John Halikos, has been farewelled by hundreds of mourners at a funeral this morning. The Darwin property developer passed away suddenly last week, aged 66. He's been remembered for his service to the NT's construction industry and for his compassion and love for the Northern Territory community. Iran's new supreme leader has issued his first public statement saying his country will continue to leverage the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 of the world's oil is transported through the vital thoroughfare, throwing oil markets into turmoil, with the regime determined to maintain maximum pressure on the waterway. Bridget Rollison has more from the Middle East.
Towering metal skeletons, all that's left of tankers attacked by Iran, as it pushes its advantage in the Gulf.
Certainly, the leverage of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must continue to be used.
A statement read out by a presenter on state media, the first message from Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, since he was chosen to succeed his father.
I had the honour of seeing his body after his martyrdom. What I saw was a mountain of steadfastness, and I heard that the fist of his intact hand had been clenched.
But this did little to kill off speculation about Khamenei's health. The famously reclusive new supreme leader hasn't been seen in public since before the bombing which killed his father and much of their family.
It is possible that he was wounded, but he is safe and in good health.
I wouldn't issue life insurance policies on any of the leaders of the terrorist organisations.
After more than a dozen Iranian attacks on civilian vessels since the war began, the US says its Navy could escort ships through the strait.
That was always in our planning.
Israel and the US have continued their attacks inside Iran, the US president warning more is on the way. We have unparalleled firepower. Watch what happens to these deranged scumbags today. But it's not only regime targets that have sustained damage.
They destroyed that house and this one and ours here. Now we're staying with relatives. Where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere.
Everything is damaged. The bathroom wall has fallen apart, the ceiling and the cabinets as well. In any case, thank God we are safe ourselves.
A rescue is underway for a missing US refuelling plane carrying at least 5 crew lost over western Iraq in an incident not involving friendly or enemy fire. The Gulf states have continued to come under attack from Iran, including essential infrastructure, while Israel is still trading fire with Iran's proxy group Hezbollah and launching nighttime raids in southern Lebanon.
As this war threatens to spiral out of control, the United Nations is warning of a growing humanitarian disaster. As many as 3.2 million Iranians have been displaced, while in Lebanon, more than 800,000 people have fled their homes. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The federal government has allowed the release of more than 700 million litres of diesel and petrol from the emergency stockpile to address shortfalls in regional areas. The move comes as the war in the Middle East sends diesel prices soaring above $2.60 a litre. But the Energy Minister is pleading with the public to stop panic buying, insisting Australia is not running out of fuel. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
One servo in town and it's out of fuel.
It's happened over a couple of days, so people aren't prepared.
With shortfalls across regional Australia driven by a spike in demand, farmers are travelling extra distances to secure crucial supplies.
We ran out of diesel on Monday and on Wednesday we ran out of petrol. So we've had no deliveries since.
The situation prompting a second government intervention in as many days.
Despite the fact that Australia's fuel has been arriving and that our minimum stock obligations are in good shape, of course we have continued to see unacceptable impacts, particularly in regional Australia.
By law, Australia's refineries and importers must keep a certain amount of fuel in storage. From today, they've been given the green light to release a fifth of their stocks. 500 million litres of diesel, or 5 days' worth, and 300 million litres of petrol, enough for 6 days. Less fuel in storage, more in the pump, mainly in regional areas.
This will enable the fuel companies to more flexibly manage their supply chain.
It's on top of yesterday's directive to lower fuel standards, allowing an extra 2 days' worth of petrol to flow from Brisbane's Ampol refinery.
I hope now the government has woken up that this is a serious issue.
The only party offering an alternative solution, One Nation.
If it requires rationing in the cities, we're not saying you can't have fuel, but you have to limit it because we have to keep these semi-trailers moving.
If you want to advocate petrol rationing, you're welcome to do that. That is not my intention.
The problem for Australia is we import about 90% of our liquid fuels. It comes from refineries in Asia, which rely on oil from the Middle East. Reports are starting to emerge that some countries are looking at holding back stock destined for export. China, Australia's biggest supplier of jet fuel, considering cancelling cargoes already under contract. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
The Middle East conflict is also having a significant impact in some of the world's most remote villages. Gulf countries depend heavily on migrant labour, and at least 13 foreign nationals have been killed during the war so far. South Asia correspondent Meghna Bali travelled to a remote village in Nepal to meet the family of one of the victims.
The grief inside this home is overwhelming. They killed my precious son, she screams repeatedly. Her husband tries to comfort her.
It has been really painful to lose my only son.
29-year-old Dibas Shrestha was killed on March 1st after an Iranian missile attack near Abu Dhabi's Zayed International Airport. The missile was intercepted, but debris struck and killed him.
I saw news that 3 people, a Nepali, a Pakistani and a Bangladeshi, had been killed in the attack. The media showed a photo of the Nepali victim. It wasn't my son, but then we received his body.
Like many in this remote Himalayan village, Dibas left home for work in the Gulf. He worked night shifts as a security guard, one of millions of South Asian migrants that keep the region running. The work can be difficult, but the wages are higher than what they could earn here.
He used to tell us, don't panic about household expenses. I will do better.
Dibas is one of at least 13 civilians killed in Iranian strikes across the Gulf since the conflict began. Most of the victims are migrant workers. Millions more remain in the region, many with no way out, like these Indian seafarers.
Our company is not listening to us. Continuous bombing is taking place.
Their worst fears, now a tragic reality for some. Dibas's body was repatriated and cremated last week, but the rituals offer little comfort.
He had big dreams, to work for a few years, then come back and start a business in Nepal.
Dibas Shrestha left this quiet village hoping to build a better life for his family. Instead, thousands of kilometres away, he became an unexpected victim of war, and the future his family was counting on is now gone. The consequences of a distant war felt unbearably close to home. Meghna Bali, ABC News, Gorkha.
Staying with the impacts of the war, Iranian activists in Malaysia have attempted to speak with women of the Iranian women's soccer team as fears mount for their safety upon returning. The women are in limbo, awaiting flights to the Middle East, but say they've been told they will be welcomed back in the country.
A late-night encounter on the streets of Kuala Lumpur. Iranian activists make a desperate approach to the women's soccer team. The players say they've been told they'll be treated well on their return to Iran, even treated like princesses. But Iranians here in Malaysia pushed back, fearing for the women's safety on their arrival. They have deep concerns the players haven't made their decision freely.
If they stay here, their family's life are in danger. If they go back, even their own life is also in danger.
The team was labelled wartime traitors after they didn't sing the anthem at a match in the Asian Cup. 7 players were granted protection visas by Australia. 1 changed their mind. An Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the remainder of the team would be welcomed back with open arms. But Iranian Australians don't buy that. They're calling on the Asian Football Confederation and FIFA to intervene.
They have huge influence. They should use this influence to seek the transparency and the safety of the players.
Analysts claim both of these governing bodies have failed their human rights obligations over this affair. Neither organisation has responded to questions from the ABC over whether a human rights risk assessment was carried out.
The Iranian women are caught in limbo in Malaysia, awaiting flights home into a war zone and an uncertain future. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Kuala Lumpur.
Major US cities will ramp up security around Jewish institutions after a ramming attack at a synagogue in Michigan. Authorities say the attacker drove through the doors and down a hallway before his vehicle caught fire. One security guard was injured and the suspect is now dead. In a separate incident, a gunman with links to the Islamic State was killed shortly after opening fire at a university in Virginia. 2 US Army personnel were injured and the FBI has opened a terrorism investigation. To finance now, and it was another lacklustre day for the share market, with oil prices remaining high. Meanwhile, the consumer watchdog has voiced concerns that Australia's petrol retailers might be overcharging. Here's David Chow.
It was only 3 weeks ago when you could buy petrol for about $1.70 per litre. Those were the good old days. But now you'd be lucky to find a servo selling unleaded for $2.15. Darwin has the highest average price, while Canberra's got the lowest. But Perth was where prices went up the most, up 60 cents a litre. So the ACCC is writing to petrol companies across the nation to ask why there's such a huge disparity. And it's concerned there might be some profiteering going on, which is probably what many of us already suspected. Now let's take Sydney, for example. When wholesale fuel costs go up or down, it normally takes 7 days for retailers to adjust their prices. But what the consumer watchdog noticed is when the war broke out, prices at the Bowser rose almost immediately for some mysterious reason. And while it's not illegal to price gouge, it's against the law to give a false or misleading reason for the overcharging. So this investigation might not get terribly far. Meanwhile, the share market ended its day practically flat, but it's down 2.6% this week, and it's plummeted by more than 6% since Israel and America started their war against Iran. And it's probably no surprise that shares of fuel retailers went up today after the government said they don't have to hold as much in reserves, so they can sell a lot more. Overseas, there were some mild to heavy falls for markets in the US, UK and Asia. The Aussie dollar is a bit weak at 70.6 US cents, and in commodities, gold, silver and iron ore prices rose, while oil was still very expensive at over $100 US a barrel. And that's despite the fact the US has decided to temporarily let other countries purchase Russian oil that's already stranded at sea, which smacks of desperation. And that's finance.
To sport now, and Gold Coast will continue to take a cautious approach with Jamara Ugle-Hagen's return to the AFL, with coach Damien Hardwick refusing to rush the 23-year-old into the side. The Suns are preparing to play West Coast, but the coach needs to see more from the former #1 pick. Tom Maddox reports.
Relief after desperately clinging on to victory.
Who would be a coach, hey? Who wants to do this? Seriously, you've got to be a man.
And that is it! Carlton win! They've held on for dear life!
Carlton was facing another collapse. Zach Williams' set shot late in the final term was the Blues' only second-half goal. It was an ugly but hard-fought win after a week in the headlines.
Tonight was a little bit about our club. You know, we've been, targeted throughout the whole week, both inside and out.
For the plucky Tigers, it was an opportunity missed. The difference was wayward spearhead Tom Lynch, who finished with 2 goals, 7.
I think most forwards in the comp in the first part of the season, if you're having 10 shots on goal, you're doing something right. So he understands his execution was off, but it was really blustery out there.
A forward who has to wait to make his impact is Jamara Ugle-Hagan. The former Dog won't be rushed into the Gold Coast side to face West Coast.
He was coming to my office this morning. He's a little bit disappointed that he wants to play and he's keen to play, and we're keen to play him as well. But we've got to, as I said last week, we want to set him up for success.
The reigning premiers can't afford to leave anyone in the VFL. Brisbane has 17 players unavailable due to injury or suspension.
We're probably facing adversity reasonably early in the season, but the thing about it is that we've been a club, particularly over the last couple of years, that's been able to cope with that really well.
That resilience will be tested when they take on Sydney tomorrow. Tom Maddox, ABC News.
The Matildas are gearing up for their Women's Asian Cup quarter-final against North Korea in Perth. Tom Wildey is there. Tom, the Matildas are without 2 of their biggest stars.
That's right, Mitchell. No Hayley Raso and no Steph Catley for the Matildas tonight. Both of them out of the side with concussion. Raso was concussed in the 4-0 win over Iran, while Catley was concussed in the 3-3 draw with South Korea. Neither of them fit for selection tonight. It means that Joe Montemurro, the Australian coach, will have to look to his backups to fill the void left by those 2 first-choice players. There's a lot on the line for the Matildas tonight. Obviously, a spot in the Women's Asian Cup semi-final, but also, if they win tonight, if they beat North Korea, they'll qualify directly for the Women's World Cup next year. It's the last time that performance in this tournament will directly influence qualification for that tournament. That being said, both Joe Montemurro and Australia captain Sam Kerr have said that they're not looking too far ahead and that their focus is entirely on tonight, on beating North Korea and qualifying for a semi-final in Perth on Tuesday.
Tom Wildey in Perth, thanks for joining us. It's been a decade since an Aussie woman has won the Australian Open, but Hannah Green is trying to turn the tide. The 29-year-old finished day 2 of the Women's Australian Open in Adelaide in a tie for the lead at 5 under par after carding a remarkable 6 birdies. Fellow Australian Kirsten Rudgley shares a place of the lead, finishing with a 5 under 67. Minjee Lee wasn't up to the pace, sitting in 14th at 1 under after making a slow start. The West Australians' only 2 birdies coming on the back 9. And now to the weather. Jane Polkinghorne has sent in this photo of a Bathurst Island storm, and you can send your weather photos through to weatherpicsnt@abc.net.au. Cloudy with showers through most of the territory today, storms north of Tea Tree, and as you heard earlier, now record-breaking flooding at Nauru Daly River. 99% humidity in Darwin today with a top of 30 degrees, 30 in Berry Springs as well. Bachelor 28 and Jabiru 33. Across the rest of the NT, Katherine 33, Nhulunbuy 32 and Borroloola 33. Tennant Creek 30, Alice Springs 25 and Yalara 32. On the satellite, scattered cloud over with storms over the north extending into central Australia, cloud over southern WA, southeast Queensland and eastern New South Wales too. The tropical low that's caused havoc in the NT in the last week is now over the northern Gregory district and slowly moving towards WA. Interstate tomorrow, 27 in Brisbane, 25 for Sydney and Canberra, Melbourne 24, Hobart heading for 23, Adelaide a top of 29 and Perth 30. Back in the NT, 28 in Alice Springs, 32 in Yalara, 30 for Tennant Creek. Further north, 29 for Borroloola, 31 in Nhulunbuy and 31 for Katherine. And for the west, Jabiru 31, Bachelor 28, Berry Springs 30 and Darwin 29. A broad flood watch is still in place for parts of the top end, central and western inland areas as that tropical low moves towards WA today and tomorrow. The Katherine and Victoria River are under minor flood warnings, while major flooding is continuing along the Daly River and catchments along the Queensland border. Low tide tomorrow morning will be at 8:12, seas at 1 metre. Sunrise just before 10 to 7 and 7:02 for sunset. And looking ahead, showers and the chance for storms continuing across the weekend for Darwin, most likely in the rural area. Showers increasing in Alice Springs over the next week and over the weekend and into next week. And that's ABC News for this Friday night. Thank you for your company. Good night.